Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have Morgan Bevell from Bevell's Advocate here today to teach us about navigating the IEP process. We're going to be talking about so many helpful things and a big emphasis on learning about your rights so you can advocate for your child with confidence and work very collaboratively and effectively with your education team. If you're not familiar with Bevell's Advocate, they are a nonprofit here in Utah, and they are committed to empowering, educating, and supporting families that have children with special needs and various disabilities. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Morgan Bevell. Thank you so much for being here, and it is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Can everyone, or Sylvia, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. All right. So yes, today we're going to be talking about navigating the IEP process, knowing your rights, and just kind of a little bit about what that looks like. Just like Sylvia said, my name is Morgan Bevell. I am the founder and president of Bevell's Advocate. I have spent the past 10 years or so, gaining extensive education and experience in the special education field. I hold a bachelor's in psychology from Brigham Young University, and then I went on to get my master's in special education for high incidence disabilities from the top university in special education, the University of Kansas. And I have worked in various roles, including a nanny, tutor, residential treatment center coach, paraeducator, in the special education field, all while collaborating closely with the families of those children that I was serving. So my vast range of knowledge and this professional network that I've grown, I feel helps me be uniquely qualified to help connect these families like yourself to resources and support that you may need. A little bit about me personally and what got me into this. So it's extremely personal to me. My sister has a learning disability, and I watched my mom attend her school meetings, those IEP meetings, while growing up. I noticed the extreme emotional toll that it took out on her, just trying to coordinate with the schools and get on the same page. And sometimes that the outcomes didn't always align. Flash forward 10 years, and I'm seeing some of the same cycles repeat with my good friend Grace, who's pictured on this screen. I've worked with Grace since she was about a year and a half and come to love her as one of my own. And so I've just wanted to become an advocate for Grace and for millions of families, just as my mom once was for my sister. So we're on a mission to create a world where not only Grace can thrive, but all of your loved ones as well. So with that, this is Bevell's Advocate. This is what has stemmed from that. It's our nonprofit organization, and our mission is to empower, educate, and assist families of individuals with disabilities in navigating a variety of resources. So our solution and our approach consists of one-on-one coaching and support, detailed review of the students' educational records to kind of help identify any violations, outline areas for improvement, and recommend services and solutions to support the child's educational success. We also love to stay involved in all communication and action items with the schools just for that accountability portion. And then we also provide access to a network of resources and recommendations and more. We recognize that every family's needs are different, and so we try to tailor our support to each family that we're working with. So today, our goals are to understand the basics of the IEP process. It's kind of an overwhelming thing, especially if you're new to it. So we're going to break it down into bite-sized pieces. We're going to learn a little bit about the legal rights and protections that you have as a parent and as a member of the IEP team. And then we're going to talk about some strategies for effective advocacy and explore a little bit more about our resources and how we may be able to help you. So first, what is an IEP? So an IEP is an individualized education program. It's a legally binding document, and it has very specific eligibility requirements to receive special education services under the IDEA, which is just an acronym for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the federal law that kind of governs special education. So there are 5 main portions to an IEP, and we'll kind of break these down in the next few slides. The first one is the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, or the PLAF. So this is really the meat and potatoes of the IEP. It answers the why. So it's where the student is currently at. It highlights the strengths and weaknesses, concerns and needs. And then it goes on to say how their disability affects their involvement and ability to progress in school compared to their typical peers. And so this is kind of where all of that data lives. We like to call it the data central. Then we have the annual goals. So this is what we like to think of as more of the roadmap to growth. So it's the blueprint and it answers the what. So this section of the IEP, it kind of bridges the gap between the students' present levels and where they should be developmentally and those appropriate standards. So these goals are really probably what are most talked about in your IEP meetings. It's kind of how we're going to get your student closer to their full potential, their success. Okay, another section is the service time and placement. So this is the GPS of the IEP. It answers the when and where. And we like to say a goal without a plan is just a wish. So this is really the plan of how these services or how these goals are going to be accomplished. So it talks about the specifics in like the frequency and location of offered support. So for example, with speech, if you're getting speech support, they'll get 60 minutes a month in that alternate location. So they'll put, those are like pull-out services is one of the examples. But it just should reflect the time needed for the student to work on achieving their annual goals. And this is based on where those current levels in the PLAF and then their previous rates of progress. Okay, the next one is accommodations and the assessment addendum. So these are the rule books of the IEP, and it answers the how. So it's the approach. These are how the student will participate in their grade level. We want them to be in that least restrictive environment. So we want them to be with their typical peers in the general education classroom as much as possible, whatever that may look like for them. So these are kind of how the student would be able to do that, whether it's extended time or breaks, allowing fidgets, anything like that. Those are just some quick examples, but these are where they would be outlined. So the supports are very scientifically based and like research in order to show, they want the data behind it, right? So they want to be able to show like, oh, if they get these breaks, then they are typically able to stay on task longer or go without behaviors or things like that. So there should be a lot of data behind the accommodations as well. We love data. We love having the numbers show what we're trying to do and back us up. And so this is that section in which that will live. And the last section, depending on your child's age, might not be in there yet, but the transition planning. So it's the epilogue of the IEP. It's the who. So this is the foreshadowing. Where are we trying to get? So the transition plan is required for all SPED students who are 14 and older. So again, if you're in elementary school years, this might not apply to you just yet, but it is in your future. And this is just aimed to helping students determine who they're going to be as adults. It helps them figure out their interests and their goals for after high school, what their living will be like, their job situation, just kind of how they are going to, what their life will look like after high school when that structure isn't necessarily there anymore. And then once they get to this point where that transition plan is in there, this should this should drive a lot of the decisions in the IEP. So when they're in high school and, oh, I want to be a veterinarian or I want to work with animals. Okay, what classes can we take that will align with the student's interests? Or I want to be a mom. Okay, let's maybe look into like child development or things like that. Like you try to kind of tailor the students' classes and just overall experience to this, to accomplishing this transition plan and helping them become great members of society. So I know I went through that quick and it's a lot to take in. And so again, if you have any answers or sorry, any questions, just pop them in the chat or feel free to chime in and we can get those answered for sure. But the next section we're going to talk about are what are my rights? So knowing your rights as a parent is super important. So you have many. I will start with that. But the main ones I wanted to cover today are these three. So first, you have every right to participate in the IEP process. It sounds kind of like common sense, but sometimes parents are not aware that they have just as much of a voice as the school. So you are an active and vital member of this team. You have the right to call IEP meetings if you're not seeing progress or you have a concern or something's not being met. You have every right to call an IEP meeting. You also, within that, you have the right to reschedule meetings if other members are not present. That might be important to the meeting. So if you have concerns about the child's speech service times, then and they kind of go into the meeting, they're like, oh, the speech pathologist left their notes with so and so, so we can just keep going. I would suggest that you, as annoying as it is, reschedule because that's not supposed to happen. Every member of the IEP team should be present when you're doing these meetings. Again, it can be a pain to work with everyone's schedules, but especially if you have a concern and wanted to have that conversation with that person, then I would highly suggest just rescheduling. And that's, again, totally within your right. And then with that as well, if you are not happy by the end of the IEP meeting, or there are some things that still kind of need to be addressed or maybe follow up on, and they'll say, oh, we'll just follow up on that. Just sign this one for now and we'll update it later. Do not sign the IEP if you are not completely happy with it, if you are not comfortable with it, or if there are some loose ends that still need to be tied up. Again, it is a legal document. And so once that is signed, it needs to be implemented. And so just, you can just say, oh, well, I would like to look over this or think over it a little bit more, or, oh, I'd like to maybe think about these loose ends that we have a little bit more before going on and signing. And again, that is totally fine. Oh my goodness. Sorry, these dogs. Okay, the next is give or deny consent. I'm gonna mute myself really quick, actually. Maybe he's done. Okay. So you have the right to give or deny consent. So parents must provide consent before certain actions like initial evaluations or change of placements. So again, it is totally within your right to either give or deny those things. If you're not comfortable with, say, the change of placement that they're proposing, totally within your right to say that and kind of work as a team to brainstorm another option. Finally, you have the right to access educational records. So under the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, which is FERPA, and the IDEA, which is that big special education law that we talked about earlier, parents have the right to access their child's educational records. And this is crucial to understand as far as your child's educational history, monitoring progress, and making informed decisions in the IEP process. So some examples of things that you might want to request at times are cumulative academic records. So that can be report cards and grades. This can be attendance records, anything like that that might influence or just help get a better picture of your child's educational experience. You have the right to request. You also have the right for special education records, so getting those current and past IEPs. You have the right to review those and have those, and I would highly suggest keeping your own copies as well. Maybe a little filing cabinet or folder, or I would have them both digitally and printed out, just better safe than sorry, just to have those for your own records. Let's see, you can also have evaluation reports and assessments. So any testing that they do, like the psychological, academic, behavioral, functional assessments, especially with the eligibility ones, you have the right to request those, to see those reports and have those again for your own records, as well as progress reports. You should be getting regular progress reports. And those are just good to have on hand as well. Another great thing that is good to know is that you can also request to have the behavioral or disciplinary records. So if there is an incident that happens at school, and there was some kind of disciplinary action that happened, you have the right to, they have to report it. So you have the right to see that and to have a copy of it, just again for your records and just to help gain that overall picture for your child's experience. And let me think what else. Yeah, like health records, again, testing, all the good things. Let me just, can we ask for a progress report before parent teacher conference? Yes, absolutely. You can ask for that report at any time. You are an active member, and so there's no time frame on when you can ask for things. And with this, when you request these records, they have 45 days legally to provide them to you. A lot of schools will do it much quicker than that, especially things like progress reports, because they should be keeping up on that data anyways. And so it's just a matter of kind of updating what they have and sending it out. And then also one thing that a lot of parents don't know, you can also request correspondence with staff and administration, like emails, exchanges, notes from meetings. So if you are maybe worried about how they're communicating about your child behind closed doors or within the school without you present, any conversations that happen with your student's name in it, you have access, you have the right to access those. So they'll have to offload all those emails and those like little behind like the IEP notes that they were taking, anything like that. It's your child, you have the right to all of that. And so that is just a good thing to know. If they try to give you any pushback, that's not true. And yeah, I know that's again a lot, but feel free, I'll keep an eye on that chat. So knowing all of this, some strategies and tools to advocate effectively. Sometimes going into these meetings, it's super overwhelming. You go in there and there's 6 to 8 members of the school kind of sitting at the other side of the table, and it can often feel like a them versus you situation, right? And so these are just some things to keep in mind, just to kind of help you go in and be more educated and know what more to expect walking into these. So some ways that I advise my families to do is for proper preparation, to gather documentation. So all of those things we just talked about, maybe not all, that might be a little overkill, but just collecting like any relevant documents. So previous IEPs, evaluations, testings, maybe notes or emails that you've received home from teachers, anything that is relevant and can back up any claims that you may be making. is great to have. And the more organized, the better. So, whatever system works for you, sometimes parents bring like the little accordion files and have them separated that way, or just even a normal, just folding folder. I don't know if that's a word, but just a normal folder like that. Whatever works for you, highlighting, sticky noting, just best to be prepared like that so that you're not fumbling through looking during the meeting itself, and you can focus on what's being said and having more of that in-person conversation. Um, and with that, I would review like those progress reports that you've been receiving, and the needs. So just review that most recent IEP, kind of where you left off, and then the progress reports that you've received since then, just so you understand what's working and where adjustments might be needed. If you're not seeing any progress on a certain goal, you can bring that up during the meeting. And then finally, I would prepare kind of a list of goals and questions. So having this list prepared ahead of time just helps everyone stay on track and keeps everyone grounded and focused. Sometimes the meetings can get away from us, or we have all these ideas in our head and going into it, but then we're in there and you're like, oh, shoot, I really wanted to ask about XYZ. So just taking some time, just write it out, whatever works for you, pen and paper, note on your phone. Again, whatever works best for you is just, it helps to kind of make sure all of your needs are addressed in that meeting, and that everyone comes out with all their questions answered and things like that. Another pro tip I like to have, especially if there's been a lot of contention in those rooms, in those meetings, one thing that I like to suggest is printing out a picture of your child to have either on the table or on the front of that folder that you might be bringing in. This I've noticed just kind of helps us all remember that we're all on the same team. We all want what's best for your kid. And even though it might feel like that, you versus the school at times, they truly want to do what's best for your kid. And so having that picture printed out just kind of helps us all like get that visual reminder, like, oh, we're here for little Susie and we all want what's best for her. So I should maybe, like, it just helps keep you in check, keeps them in check. I just like to, it just sets a good feeling for the meeting. So next I'm going to talk about a few of the common pushbacks that our clients have seen and that I've seen as we have advocated in these meetings. And so if you bring up a concern and the school says, oh, the school's not responsible for your child's behavior at home. Okay. So something that we can talk about is like, oh, I understand that, but behavior, as I'm sure we all know, is very interconnected and replicated across many settings, right? So it's most of the time it's not an issue just solely at home. And so addressing these behaviors at school can help with the consistency and that practice for the student. Maybe, and that will help in turn reduce those behaviors at home and ultimately affect the child's overall development and learning. And the purpose of special education is to help these students access the general education curriculum as much as possible, with as little disruption as possible. And so these behaviors could be hindering that. And so it's definitely something that the school should take interest in. And so that's just something that you can kind of talk about, and yeah, something to keep in mind. Another one we hear a lot is, let's just wait and see how they do, or we can't do that yet, so we're just going to wait and see. And a lot of this raises a lot of concerns in the families we work with, just because obviously that's precious time wasted, right? We don't want to ever have our children placed on the back burner or just to sit idle, right? We want to work towards those goals and that transition plan to for who they are going to be ultimately in life, right? So it's not just a little exercise for the now. This is putting them on the right trajectory for life. And so I would definitely recommend kind of voicing these concerns, that it's a lost opportunity for growth, and maybe consider other supports that we can kind of put in place for now that the school and you feel comfortable with, to kind of help bridge that gap. And then again, you can always adjust it as needed. As a member of the IEP team, you can call meetings whenever you feel is appropriate. And so we can always make adjustments, but it's better to have something in place as opposed to just that waiting period. And I see something in the chat. Okay. Um, so then another one that kind of goes hand in hand with that. Oh, the data doesn't support the need for XYZ. Oh, the data that we've seen, we haven't seen a need for increased speech or increased social skills classes or whatever it may be. Again, I would ask to obtain that data, what they're looking at, so that you can kind of, and have them walk you through it if you're not comfortable with how to read it. Just kind of to be able to see that helps kind of get everyone on that same page. And then if that data, maybe it's not something you're comfortable with, or you don't feel like it paints the full picture, you can ask about different forms of assessments, or different forms of data that we could maybe collect, to help get a better picture of the child's needs. And so maybe observations from other teachers, or even just your own input is data alone at home, or just your experience, just to help you again get that full picture and not just pigeonholed into just what they're seeing at school. Because again, this is for their livelihood, and it goes so far beyond just the in the classroom. And the final one I want to talk about is the biggest one that we see and the biggest one that we have a problem with. And this is a one-on-one aid is the most restrictive environment. And so we're not willing to do that for your child. And while this was true a little bit back in the day, that research is out of date. And so schools that are still using this, I would just kindly remind them like, oh, that research is actually out of date. And so we would appreciate it if you kind of stop using that, right? And so we want to be as up to date as possible. And the research now is showing that it actually helps open doors as it's intended for these students to access that curriculum more effectively, and as well as peer interactions as well. And so again, that one-on-one aid is intended to support the child to be able to fully participate in these gen ed opportunities in that least restrictive environment. And so them saying that it's the most restrictive is just not true. And I have a diagram here. This was on behalf of the IEP Student Center in Utah as well. They're a great organization. So this is just a lot of the, what's it called? Placements that a student can be in. So we've got the gen ed classroom down here. And that is obviously the least restrictive. That's like the baseline. And then as you work up the pyramid here, we get to the most restrictive. So the most restrictive, I think we would all agree, is a student that is bound by hospital. They're not able to interact with their typical peers. And as you can see, on the right side, it's the amount of support that they have. And on the left is the amount of like typical peers. So as you move up the ladder, you get less of those peers, and typically more of that one-on-one and more intensive support from staff. And so the question that we tend to ask in these meetings is where would you place the star? So the star down here represents the one-on-one para. We tentatively in the IEP Student Center placed it right in between that special education resource pullout and the self-contained unit classroom. So because you're still able to access the general education class. You just kind of have that helper around to kind of maybe give you some prompts to just help you stay on track a little bit more. And so I would maybe I can send anyone this document as well, and it's sometimes helpful to have at the meetings, just for that visual. Like, hey, would you say you really think it's more restrictive than a hospital setting? And so that's just something that's one of the biggest pushbacks that we see, and it's an ongoing battle. Oh, sorry, did someone have a question? Okay. Um, Anyways, yeah, so that is kind of where we go with that. So this is all, again, a very overwhelming situation. And these IEP meetings, while we hope that they are super collaborative and we're on the same page as the school, sometimes it's not always the case, unfortunately. As I mentioned earlier, there's sometimes that contention. Parents feel that the school's not listening, that their needs aren't being met, that the student is being placed on the back burner, whatever it may be. Or maybe you just don't feel confident enough going in, like they're throwing out all these acronyms and I'm not sure what that means. That's kind of where we can help and step in and kind of bridge that gap. So we offer, one of the main things we offer is that educational support. So we can do that deep dive into the records and see what we're looking at, what we're working with, and we'll give you that expert analysis on the child's IEP and those progress reports and kind of our take on how they're doing as a third party. But the main thing we do is that advocacy, where we can go with you to these meetings, just so one, you have someone sitting with you on that side of the table when you're faced with the whole school board is what you feel like, just so that you have that comfort of knowing someone is on my side. And so we can help make sure that we help bring everyone down to a level where we can all just have a adult conversation. We don't go in there and strong arm the schools. That's not the purpose, right? We don't want to burn bridges with the school, because ultimately the idea is that your child will be there much longer than we will. And so we want to be able to work with the school and help you work with the school to get your needs met as well as the child's. And then after all of that, we can kind of give you some more recommendations and strategies to help your child succeed. Let me take a quick look at the chat. Actually, I'll do that at the very end, but and then we also do offer some additional support. So financial guidance, helping understand your options and maximize your resources there, whether that's with like the Social Security stuff, grant opportunities, whatever it may be, we can help you, help steer you in the right direction there. We've got the medical recommendations, help connect you to trusted specialists and providers in your area. And that is just based on what other clients have said and maybe other doctor recommendations. I'm not a doctor, so take that how you will. And then just the social networking. So helping you find that supportive community of other parents that may be in your situation. So again, with that ongoing advocacy, we can have those regular consultations, that one-on-one coaching and support, help you maybe learn all these acronyms so it doesn't seem like they're speaking a different language when you go into the meetings. We can help that proactive advocacy and help you kind of hit those problem areas before it becomes detrimental, right? So we want to be able to get out in front of it. We can provide that expert guidance, and then that, again, the personalized support will work with you and your child's needs. And I know I covered a lot, and it's a overwhelming and heavy topic, dense topic. And so I wanted to definitely leave a lot of time for questions that you may have, just about the IEP process, your rights, advocacy strategies, anything we talked about. I will just ask that as we do this, that for privacy concerns, let's not bring up specific situations and try to keep it as like hypothetical and general as possible. And if you do have more specific questions with a specific school or with your child, that you can reach out to me at the very end. And I'd be happy to kind of help you with that. And I did see some pop up in the chat. So let me get that open. Do your services cost money? How do you compare to Utah's parent center? So, one thing that a lot of people do not know is that with the Utah Parent Center, um, one half of their 50% of their salary actually comes from the schools that they are contracted with. And so, what that means is that, let's say you are going into ABC school and you call the Utah Parent Center to bring in the ABC specialist from them to advocate for you. So they have an assigned member from the Utah Parent Center to go with you, but the ABC school is paying half of their salary. And so oftentimes we've noticed that you don't want to bite off the hand that feeds you, right? And so there is sometimes a conflict of interest there. And so we differ in the fact that we're not affiliated with any schools, and we will never be affiliated with any schools because we want to be a true advocate for you and for the families that we serve. And as of now, our services, due to our benevolent contributions and the fundraising efforts, right now, we are able to offer our services on a complimentary basis. We do anticipate that to change in the near future. And so again, if you have any of those concerns or questions, we'd be happy to work with you. And we can set up a call to kind of talk about your situation and what you're kind of looking for, and then we can make a plan going from there. Let me see. Any success in getting a one-on-one in the public schools within the districts here or charter schools? And someone mentioned that they have a daughter with a one-on-one in special education classroom. It was not easy to get, and they brought data from the psych testing and behavioral plan. Yes, so again, this is one of the biggest battles that we're facing, especially in Utah, getting those one-on-one aids. And we are making progress with it. I think the more that we all kind of start advocating, obviously not every child needs that one-on-one aid. For those that do, the more that we all are united and advocate for that, and maybe use that same verbiage and the document I showed earlier with the diagram, the more we all push back, the schools will be able to work with us a little bit more. And as far as any success personally, we have not had any success in the past year that we have just kidding. We've had one. And I know that the IEP Student Center, they, in their past 17 years, with Mart's Law, they have only gotten one as well. And so we were just within the last year we got the one. And I know their one that they were able to obtain was within the last couple years. And so we are making progress with that. Again, it's the biggest battle we're facing. And so I am hopeful that we will continue to make progress on that front. But it definitely is tough and there is a lot of pushback. And so if that is one of the main concerns, I would definitely suggest bringing an advocate with you, or bringing just as much documentation to back up why a one-on-one might be helpful. And one thing that I've found is if you get like an independent evaluation or anything like that, if the doctor like kind of talks about why they may need someone with them at all times or may benefit from someone, that is sometimes helpful as well. Like the data speaks for itself. And so that is something that's been, the more prepared you are, it definitely is for your benefit. Can schools do ADHD testing? Yes. So with that, there's 13 eligibility requirements. And so um, if the ADHD kind of it falls one underneath, okay, let me back up. So it needs to adversely affect their ability to access the general education classroom. So extra fidgeting or being able to, um, or maybe like 2 minute, or what is it? What am I saying? Like being able to sit still. Maybe they would benefit from having more breaks. I wouldn't approach it in a sense of, hey, I need my child tested for ADHD. I would approach it in a more, and I have a template for this as well. If you reach out to me, I can help you form this, but I have, or I think my child would benefit from special education services because of XYZ. So because of they get easily distracted or they're not able to sit in their seat or whatever, then they'll perform a full workup on like everything and see if they qualify for that. So it's not a matter of like diagnosing them. It's a matter of if they would qualify for the special education services, if that makes sense. And can you make your slideshow available to download? Yes, I will definitely do that. And I will get with Sylvia maybe after this and have her send out a link to it with the recording of this as well, if that would be helpful. Perfect. Okay. Are there any other questions that I can answer while I am here? I know, again, I talk fast, I covered a lot, and I just want to make sure that everyone has some time to digest it and kind of get their questions answered. So we are located, we actually are an online platform. And so a lot of our services can be offered virtually. So right now, we have a chapter out in Utah County, and we also have a chapter in Florida, which is a little random, but and so those are our two main like physical chapters right now. But as far as we serve everyone nationwide. And so we're able to help as many people. We've just found that being able to do it virtually, we're able to help more families. So someone just asked, how do I know what's appropriate to ask for as far as speech therapy hours for my 4-year-old with Down syndrome? Um, this is a great question. So a lot of times, it's let's see, a lot of times when you're asking for things, um it's not a matter of asking for a certain amount of service time. They will typically kind of go with what standard for, again, where your child is in their present levels during the testing that they found. So they'll use that data to then see how many hours. Usually it's, they call it like service minutes. So they'll use that data to assign your service minutes. So they'll say, okay, you get 60 minutes a month or 120 minutes a week or whatever. It's kind of, it feels random. And honestly, it always feels like it's not enough. And that's just unfortunate with where we are with our funding and just what's available. And so I feel like a lot of times it's about they'll start with like 60 minutes a month or wherever they start with. And then I would ask for the data on how that time is going, what they're currently receiving. And then that way you're able to say, oh, well, they're not making progress on their speech goals. So can we increase those that speech time? And so it's just kind of um, finagling that a little bit. And one thing to add, I will say, if a school ever comes back with one of their common pushbacks, if they say that they don't have the funding, that is so illegal. So do not let them use that as a reason why your child cannot receive services. The schools receive funding for every special education child, and so they sometimes we are one of Utah is one of the it's actually the lowest funded state in the United States. And so they have funding, but they're often like on guard, like making sure that, okay, we don't want to give it all away. So they just stand there protecting it. But your child is entitled to it. And so yeah, if they bring up funding as an option, I would definitely get an advocate involved, or be your own advocate and just say, hey, I know that that's not a reason why my child can't receive services. That was a side tangent, but I hope that answered the question about the asking for speech therapy hours. I would trust their data and kind of but ask for those progress reports. And then if you don't feel like they're making enough progress that you would like to see, then I would advocate for that increase and go from there. Perfect. Okay, someone just asked maybe a little info on making accommodations. What are some things you have seen? I know it depends on the child and what their specific needs are, but maybe some good ideas. Absolutely. Yeah. So this is definitely something we have a list as well that I can send out that is just a bunch of accommodations that you can ask for, because sometimes it's hard to know what to even ask for. Like you don't know what you don't know, right? Like, oh, I didn't know that was an option. So that is something we can send out as well. But just for some ideas, depending on, again, the child's needs and diagnosis. Breaks is a super common one. Allowing fidgets is a common one. Maybe we've seen like extended test time a lot. Having like tests read aloud, like a scribe, or having tests read aloud. Let's see what else. Sometimes there's accommodations with like the bus, and if they ride the bus or not, where they sit on the bus. If they're on like the special education bus, then like, oh, they need to be sitting in the front row right behind the bus driver. Like sometimes it's as specific as that. Preferential seating. So that can be like, oh, they need to be in the front row in the classroom. That's a common one. And let's see, visual schedules. So having like a printed schedule, behavior chart, or like some kind of incentive, like sticker chart, little notes home, reports of the day. Sometimes it's hard to know, like your student will come or your child will come home and be like, oh, school was great. And then you find out that like they kicked someone and that you never heard anything, right? So sometimes like, oh, the teacher can implement like little notes in the backpack home, like either daily or weekly, I would say is pretty common. Just even like checkbox, like, oh, they did great in reading and math, but they struggled in science, things like that. Yeah, those are some off the top of my head, but definitely reach out if you're, again, looking for more specific ideas based on your students' testing and where they're at, because we can totally help you even just brainstorm some things if you think, or if you've even seen things that have been helpful at home, like maybe the sticker chart or incentive program is helpful at home, that's totally something you can advocate for to implement at school. Because again, that consistency helps with a lot. If the doesn't specifically say we don't have funding for the service, but says we need to move your child to a different school for that service to be increased, how can we approach that to keep our schools in their neighborhood school, or keep our kids in their neighborhood school? This is a great question. So yes, they sometimes go with it in a roundabout way. And there are legally some bounds to that. So if a school is not equipped to provide the service to your child, then they are responsible for either paying for the service outside of school, or they don't like doing that. So most likely they will move them to a school, maybe it's a private school or a charter school that is better equipped to handle those needs. I will say that's more of an extreme case, and there are a lot of things that can be done in the neighborhood school, those public schools, before that happens. And so if they're just jumping to that, like, oh, we need to move them, there are a lot of different things that can go on before that. So maybe providing that. So I guess it depends on what service they're looking to increase, but I can help you more with that specifically if you want to reach out. But even just asking for, okay, what are some other things that we can do? It's important that my child attends schools with their siblings and their friends and their neighborhood, right? We want them to be involved in with their typical peers as much as possible. And so we want to be able to keep them there. So just again, advocating on that front, like, what can we do here? What can you provide that will help us reach these goals? So whether it's getting that one-on-one aid for more intensive attention, or maybe it's more pull-out services, or going to that full-time special education classroom, whatever it may be, there are different options and things like that before completely moving schools. So I would definitely explore that. And if you reach out, I can help you more with that as well. Okay, we have got about 4 or 5 minutes left. So I definitely want to respect your guys' times. I know you're busy, you got a lot going on. So if you have any last minute questions, please continue to drop them in the chat, or my info is still on the screen and you can find me here. And so I'd be more than happy to answer those questions. We've got a couple minutes left for if anyone has any more. But I've really enjoyed the opportunity to present to you all today. Thank you to Sylvia and the United Angels Foundation for having me. And I hope that many of you will reach out and that we'll be able to help you guys.
Thank you so much, Morgan. That was so informative and so helpful. Thank you for extending your support outside the webinar as well. As you guys can see, Morgan has her information up here on the slide. And I want to thank all of the parents who took time out of their day to join us. We know how extremely busy you are, but thank you for taking this time. You guys are so dedicated to being the best parents you can be, so you can help support your children, and you're doing a great job. I know sometimes it can feel really hard and feel overwhelming, but we are here for you, and we have many great resources in the community like Bevell's Advocate to also assist and help with these different situations. I see a lot of thanks and gratitude in the chat, so I think we might be wrapping up. Again, this recording will be available. If you know somebody that would like the link, have them reach out to us. We'll send it out to you. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you again, Morgan. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.